What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with the box office breakdown on this New Year's Day. A happy and blessed New Year's to everyone out there, and also a continuing blessed and Merry Christmas to everyone out there, as today is the octave day of Christmas. We'll go ahead and dive into the box office numbers at this point in time, because Avatar: The Way of Water has passed the $400 million mark domestically, and right now is pacing up with where Rogue One was domestically, meaning that if we see this film match up with Rogue One continuing on in the weeks ahead. Now, of course, some would speculate the film might actually do better than Rogue One as far as its holds after this holiday frame. One could then see this film get upwards of $530 million domestically or so, as that is what Rogue One did. Of course, that was before you adjust for inflation. So that's why I honestly think that a domestic total for Avatar around $600 million or so is definitely not out of the question for this movie, but we'll talk about this a little bit more diving into the actual numbers. So I see from Deadline, it talks here about, while New Year's Eve is typically a better movie-going day than Christmas Eve, business was still down yesterday, 27% from the Friday for all movies. That's a similar decline to last weekend's Friday to Christmas Eve, 26% drop. However, New Year's Eve made more than Christmas Eve, 27.9 million to 22.2. Moviegoing is expected to be 19% above, plus 19% on New Year's Day today, and there will be an extra cushion on Monday, January 2nd, as many typically have off in honor of the Sunday holiday. And this is really what we're going to find, where we're going to find really the legs that this movie is going to have is next weekend's numbers, because so far it has had the benefit of being over this holiday frame where most people are off from school, many people are off from work, or at least somewhere in the midst of people's holiday times off from work. And so it's been able to benefit from people actually having the time to dedicate the over 3 hours needed to watch the movie. And so my big question that I have that I don't really know the answer to yet is, will this film continue to perform on those weekday numbers, right? What we've seen so far over the holiday time period, or will we see massive drop-offs? And especially next weekend's numbers, will the drop-off be significant to basically do away with the massive growth that this film has seen and the massive hold that this film has seen? As if you look at the numbers.com, you'll notice that the film has no change from last week. So very impressive numbers from Christmas weekend to New Year's weekend to have $63.4 million in its third week of release is showing that this film does indeed have a lot of strong numbers going for it. Right now, the total domestic is around $421.5 million. So again, well on its way at this point in time to being able to crack at least $500 million. And I would say probably get as much as $600 million. I don't think the film is going to be able to do quite enough to be able to catch up to where Top Gun Maverick was by the end of its domestic run of over $700 million. But again, we'll have to really see what happens next weekend, what kind of drop-off we see next weekend, as we will have, again, probably more typical weekend numbers. I expect Avatar, of course, to continue to dominate the weekend next weekend, but it is still going to be again, non-holiday weekend where people are finally back at work, and it's also first weekend in January, where you will have, of course, no big films coming out, so no competition for the movie, but also January is where films go to die. There's a reason why people don't release films in January, because they tend to not do as well. Though, of course, we have seen that if you actually put out good movies in January, people do end up going to see them. It is still a decision that has been made by studios for the last several years. Puss in Boots also saw some pretty strong numbers there. As you can see, it actually went up 31% from its last week, so $16.2 million. There's actually a chance for this film to actually break even. The numbers are still not quite exactly where they would need to be in order to guarantee this film's success, but the film is doing much better domestically, and I think, again, probably helped by the holiday frame, some positive word of mouth, so we'll wait and see again next weekend as well what kind of drop-off we see for this movie, and whether the film's going to be able to really be able to edge out the money that it still needs to make back in order to break even. Right now, it's projected to be either a little bit of a loss or a little bit of a gain, and again, it probably will end up somewhere in the middle of being a slight gain. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever also continues to make money, $4.8 million, a 38% increase from last weekend after 8 weeks of release. This is the reason why I say that $450 million domestic by the end of its run is definitely not out of the question. Some people have called me crazy for that, but I'm just looking at the numbers as they currently stand, and the film is out at over 2,000 screens still, even after 8 weeks. People are still going to see it. It will see some massive drop-offs next weekend as well, so that's why $450 million is definitely not a guarantee, but I do think that it will crack that number before it ends up leaving theaters. It's already well over $800 million worldwide. I don't think that it's going to really peak over that $850 million worldwide number, but again, that's what I've been saying for a long time now, is that the likely end result for Black Panther is going to be $800 to $850 million when all is said and done. Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody is expected to be a massive box office flop, as is Babylon, though Babylon's going to be a much bigger flop for Paramount Pictures, though I don't think that they mind all that much, seeing that they made massive profits for Top Gun and Maverick this year. So even though this film is expected to be a $100 million loss, it is still expected for the film to probably not really do all that much damage to Paramount as far as their actual bottom line is concerned. Looking at the worldwide numbers for Avatar: Way of Water, right now the film is up to $1.3 billion. The film will easily cross $1 billion before next weekend internationally. So that's, again, where this film is performing incredibly well, is in the international marketplace. And again, this is something that, for some reason, a lot of people overseas really just enjoy this kind of mindless entertainment, I guess is the way that I would describe it. You all know I'm not a big fan of the film. I know that Jeremy was. I am not. And it is something that I just, again, don't quite understand why people are wasting their time and money with. But I'm going to report the numbers as objectively as I can, because $1.3 billion, after, again, going into its third week of release, and third weekend of release, is still, just by the very numbers themselves, pretty impressive. Apparently, James Cameron has now kind of changed his tune and said that, well, actually, the break-even's probably closer to $1.5 billion, not the $2 billion that I kind of indicated a little bit earlier. It'll be interesting to see exactly what the truth is, because based on the reporting of the budgets, $1 billion was the break-even number, which means this film is already well over $100 million in net gain profit. But if we're to take what James Cameron has said by his word, then it would indicate that this film is still a financial loss, but will end up being, by the end of its run, a pretty good financial gain for the actual, for the studio, for Disney. Obviously, picking up some of the debts that were left over from 20th Century Fox when they initially started this project, and they also gave him a lot more money, as the budget, which was originally supposed to be $250 million, has now ballooned to well over $400 million. There's even some reports as high as $460 million for the production budget, with obviously, no actual clear indication of how much they spent on marketing for this movie. The fact still remains, film is doing quite well. Puss in Boots, $129.4 million worldwide. Again, it's doing much better than expected, but will it be able to survive past the holiday frame? We'll see if that positive word of mouth that this film has been getting. A lot of people who have been following my channel, at the very least, have been saying, hey, I think that this is a film that you should go see. I don't want to see it just because of the fact that it features animation similar to the animation style in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and that was my least favorite part of that movie, was the animation style. Specifically on the action sequences in Puss in Boots. So I just already don't want to see it for that reason, because I hate that type of animation. And also I think that this is just an old and tired franchise that I just have no genuine interest in anymore. Speaking of not having any interest, I haven't had interest from the very first film. That's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Still $818.4 million worldwide. It's not going to break $1 billion. It's probably going to barely, not even cross 850 million worldwide. It has a possibility, but I just don't personally see it. So this film began much better success here, much better, numbers, compared to Thor: Love and Thunder, the last major MCU film, but not nearly close to the $950 million of Doctor Strange, which came out in 2022, and also not anywhere, of course, near the $1.3 billion that the first film in this franchise made. So clearly, not only do you have a massive loss in money, right, in comparison from the first film to the second film, but then also when you take into account the inflation of ticket prices, you realize how many less people are actually going to the theater, or actually going to see this movie in comparison to that first one. And I think that that's really where Disney is going to have a lot of concern, especially seeing that their stock price is not doing all that well either. Whitney Houston's I Didn't Want to Dance with Somebody, $27.9 million worldwide. Babylon at $10.1 million, just not really doing much of anything. Looking at the box office charting, because we all love charting here on Geeks and Gamers, of course, is looking at the 2-week numbers for Babylon, Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, and Puss in Boots, where we can make some projections. So I'm projecting that Whitney Houston's film, I Want to Dance with Somebody, I don't know why they've named it that way, but anyway, it's expected to make somewhere between $39 and $55 million by the end of its run. Babylon is projected to make somewhere between $14.4 and $20 million, where Puss in Boots is expected to make somewhere between $184 and $258 million by the end of its run. If we look at the actual financials, we realize that the budget for I Want to Dance with Somebody was $45 million. For Babylon, the report was $78 million. For Puss in Boots, it was around $85 million. And so the break-evens are therefore $112.5, $195, and $212.5 respectively, meaning that the Whitney Houston film is expected to lose somewhere between $43 and $33 million, so roughly $50 million loss there. And then Babylon, as I had said, for Paramount, expected to lose over $100 million, which it just goes to show you that just because you have a lot of big names in your movies does not mean that that is going to be enough to bring people out to theaters. You have to make films that people actually want to go see, and you have to be able to market those films in such a way that people have a genuine interest in them. You're not getting that with films like Babylon or films like Amsterdam, where the only thing you have going for it is, hey, I got a bunch of big names in my film. That's not enough these days, and again, these films are ending up being massive financial losses, just like Amsterdam was over $100 million loss, as you can see down here, about 104 was the projection. The film ended up being around, again, $103.3 million loss. And so it was not the worst case scenario. It's definitely not a best case scenario. So we're looking at north of $100 million loss for Babylon. Puss in Boots, though, as I said, right, either get $16.5 million loss or a $27.8 million gain. The average of that is a gain at the end of the day. So the real, again, important factor of that's going to be, how does this film do outside of the holiday frame? And the same can be said also for Avatar. Is this film going to be able to continue steaming ahead? If it continues at this pace, then the film's going to easily pass up $2 billion, which means it's going to easily pass up the projections that I had, overperforming and having very strong legs. I could see this film doing incredibly well, continuing to do incredibly well in the international market. The big question mark is going to be the domestic. Do we see a massive drop-off domestically next weekend? And does that remain consistent also with some of the other international numbers? We'll have to wait and see. Again, based off of what they have given us as far as reported budgets, the film is at $219 million in net gain profits. So you're looking at a profitable movie, unless James Cameron's words are to be taken seriously and the film actually needed to make 1.5 to 2 billion, then we're still talking about a financial loss, which might not have nearly as much gain as if the film actually costs what they say it costs. Again, this is one of the most frustrating things about these studios today, is that they're not always honest with their numbers, and if they ever do put numbers out there, they don't always, they put the production budgets out there, but they never are as clear when it comes to the actual marketing cost, and that's why it's always a tricky game. And that's why I always use the standards of just 1.5 times the budget as the total being spent, both production budget and marketing, because that is typical for most Hollywood productions. But those are the numbers as they currently stand for the top 5 films to release this year. If you want to have a fuller breakdown, including other films, check out my channel, OMB Reviews. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think that Avatar is going to easily pass up $2 billion? I think at this point in time, $2 billion is absolutely in the conversation. My projections had this film topping out somewhere around 1.7, but this film is obviously doing much better. And again, I think a lot of that's because of the holiday season, people having off time to dedicate the 3 hours needed, over 3 hours needed for this movie. Will they still have the same time, and will they still have the same desire to go see this film starting next weekend when people are back at work, back at school, etc.? And over the next 2 weeks, when we see everyone will eventually be back in those locations. We'll have to wait and see, of course, where that is. And you can, of course, follow that here on Geeks and Gamers and over on OMBReviews.com as well. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If that's video, smash that like button, that fire button on Odyssey, and smash the little rumble button if you're watching over there. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.